Have you ever felt a chill down your spine while standing in an ancient place? A sense of dread you couldn't explain? This is a story about that feeling, about what happens when curiosity leads you astray into the darkness that lurks beneath the surface of our world. Listen closely. This is a story that could have happened to anyone. The main protagonists in this story is a group of 4 friends in their early 20s. Mark, who usually moved the strings, one would say was the leader of the group. John, the thrill-seeker, loved exploring uncharted places and going on new adventures. David, the quiet and enigmatic observer, didn't talk much, but should he talk, he always had a point. And Chris, who always cracked the most hilarious jokes and was the soul of the party. Friends since childhood, they arranged to go on vacation. After deciding their destination, they bought their tickets, prepared their suitcases, and they embarked on an adventure to Cambodia. They craved fun and joyful experiences, but soon after reaching their destination, they would witness something far more sinister. After discussion with the locals, they heard a very interesting story. Deep within the Cambodian jungle lay an ancient temple, the Temple of the Tortured Souls as it was called. Locals spoke of it in hushed tones, a place of ancient rites and vengeful spirits. They said the temple demanded sacrifices, claiming the lives of those foolish enough to disturb its slumber. The friends dismissed these warnings as mere folklore and thought it would be very cool and exciting to explore a legendary ancient temple. "These experiences in life you live only once," Mark said, trying to persuade his friends. John immediately jumped in. "I always love a good adventure," he said, stepping one foot on a wooden stool. David was more skeptical about it and hesitated. "I don't know about it, guys. You heard all those stories," he said. Chris laughed it off. "Are you afraid of a spooky old temple?" He mocked David for being hesitant. They packed some snacks and water in their backpacks, fetched some cheap flashlights from the village market. They also bought an old map from an old lady, and following the map inscriptions, they set out to find the infamous temple. Mark drove the car through the jungle on a muddy dirt road up to the point they reached a dead end. "The car can't go beyond that point," Mark said. "We'll have to continue on foot." They got out off the car and discussed the situation. Now that was a bumpy ride, wasn't it?" Chris said in a joking voice. "Are we sure we are on the right way?" David asked. John laid the old map on the car hood, and after examining it to spot their location, he brought his compass out of his pocket. "We are not far from the temple," he said. "The temple is in that direction." He pointed with his finger. "Within 10 minutes of walk, we should be able to see it," John added. "Did anyone brought a pen?" David asked. "Now what do you need a pen for?" John replied. "We need to mark our position on the map before we continue so we can find the car on our way back here. I guess no one wants to get lost in the jungle," David explained. "Good point," said Mark, and handed over a pen to John, implying he should do what David said. John marked their position on the old map, and they continued walking in the direction he suggested they would find the temple. The air hung heavy and humid as they hacked their way through the dense jungle. Wild vegetation was laying all around them. They passed by trees who had lived hundreds of years with thick vines creeping all over their logs. Tropical creepers hung all around them as they walked, and finally they saw it. In a clearing on the far, the temple was indeed there. "Ha, there it is, just as I told you," John said proudly. "Yeah, we are almost there," Mark replied. They got closer, and finally they were there, standing right before the entrance of the temple. The temple looked like a monolith of time and decay, crumbling stone, intricately carved with forgotten deities, whispered of a long-lost power. An unsettling energy pulsed within the temple walls. They stood for a minute to admire the marvelous carving on the ancient stone dot. It was fascinating. "Are we going in or what?" John said to incite them. They entered the temple, stand by the beautiful and elaborate carvings on the stone. Their footsteps were echoing through the oppressive silence. Each step deeper felt like a transgression, a violation of something sacred. The air grew colder, the light dimmer, Stairs carved in stone led the way down towards the inner area of the temple. As they went deeper, their flashlights came to use. Light from the entrance couldn't reach where they were, and they could barely even see where the entrance was at this point. They felt amazed exploring the ancient temple. The temple was wholly carved in stone, like an artificial cavern of some sort. There were strange ancient symbols engraved on the walls all around them, and as light shed on them, they momentarily shined. A thick mist laid on the floor, creating an eerie atmosphere, and high moisture made the air they breathed feel thick into their lungs. Stone sculptures of what seemed to be ancient traditional figures had a dominant presence in the temple, and all sorts of clay jars. As they proceeded, they came across what seemed to be a main lobby. In the center, there was a large sacrificial tomb which drew their attention. They got closer to examine the finding. As they approached, strange occurrences started to happen. The first sign was subtle. They thought they heard a whisper of their names, as if carried on the wind. Then, the shadows casted around by their flashlights' beams began to tremble, twisting into grotesque shapes at the edges of their vision. They got confused, slapping their flashlights, wondering if that would fix the trembling. But it wasn't the light coming out of the flashlight the problem. The shadows themselves were trembling. The temperature plummeted, and a sense of dread settled upon them. Their excitement died, replaced by a creeping fear. David swore he saw figures lurking in the shadows, their eyes glowing with malevolent intent. Suddenly, strange footsteps started echoing from the far, and the sound of coiling chains filled the chamber. They got so scared. "What's going on, guys?" Mark said with a scared voice. "Something is wrong. We have to get out of here," David replied. "Yeah, let's get out of here," the others agreed. They frantically searched for their way out, but no matter where they went, every turn they took wouldn't lead to the exit. It seemed as if they were lost in a dark and humid, scary maze. Panic set in. They stumbled through the labyrinthine corridors, desperate to escape the growing terror. Chris, his bravado gone, began to sob uncontrollably. "I don't want to die," he screamed. He tripped on a loose stone and fell, leaving an abrupt scream followed by a sudden silence. The others saw him falling and tried to help him stand back up, but what they saw was beyond any aid one could offer. His previously vibrant eyes now lost their color and were staring vacantly, his throat slash spilling blood as he fell on a sharp rock, and his soul instantly left his body, a gruesome offering to the temple's dark deity. The remaining three, with their faces etched with horror, knew they were no longer welcome. They were prey to whatever entity was haunting this place. John, driven mad by fear, bolted into the shadows, his screams echoing through the bizarre ancient temple. Mark and David realized that this was certainly the last time they ever saw him. Mark turned to David. "We have to get out of here," he whispered, his voice hoarse with terror. But it was too late. A low growl rumbled through the temple, shaking the very foundations. The boys panicked and started running, frantically getting lost and parting ways from each other. Now they were both left alone. Their heart raced of fear and beat so fast they thought it was ready to explode. They could hear the threatening whispers of shadows mumbling in an unknown language. An evil spirit took over Mark's body, forced him to take out his eyes with his own fingers, and then made Mark wrap his bloody hands around own neck and break it with a sudden twist. The snapping sound of his neck echoes in the sinister temple. The evil entities in the temple had claimed yet another victim. Out of the four of them, only one is now left alive. David, the last survivor, wasn't destined to survive for long. Covered in a mixture of sweat, tears, and thick dust, his breath felt so heavy and fast-paced, he thought he would die off. Exhausted, he fell on his knees to try and catch a breath. He felt heavy pressure against his chest, and then he saw it. An ancient, eerie spirit, with a human-like shape, wearing tribal piercings and a ritualistic hat, appear in front of him, looking at him with his piercing red eyes, and then disappeared into thin air. A chill ran down his spine, But before his brain was able to comprehend what he saw, his heart stopped and he dropped dead on the spot as the darkness surrounded his lifeless body. Everyone died in this story, reminding us that scary stories do not have a happy ending. If you like this horror tale, like and subscribe for more. Till the next one, stay tuned.